Well, guys, thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Jeanette and Doug Harrington. They are real estate agents and realtors here in Austin, Texas, and connected with them over the last couple months, and we've become friends here. So, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
It's our pleasure. Good to be
Definitely.
here.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about you guys. I know you're, like I said, you're real estate agents here in Austin. How long have you been working in that industry?
Well, Jeanette started as a realtor before I did. She started the business that we're running now. Um, I joined her in 2005, so I've been a realtor for 15 years. I was in the mortgage business before that for 15 years. Um, but Jeanette's been doing this since 1997, I think.
And I started serving two other realtors before I knew I was going to be a realtor when I grew up. So that's
So
a long
quite a
time
while.
ago.
You have some experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think we're going 24 years licensed.
And I love your guys' approach to even selling houses. Just the little I know about you and the time I've gotten to spend with you guys, that you have a real passion for even just educating people and not just getting people into a house just so you can make a sale. But could you tell me a little bit about how that plays into your experience as agents? The education side of things and how you work with clients in that way.
Well, a lot of times buyers are calling in their first time home buyers, and they haven't really had an opportunity to have any real understanding. They just know that somebody has told them that now it's time to buy a house.
Yeah.
And they either get tired of paying rent, or they got married and now everybody, including their mother and father, are saying, you need to go buy a house. You need to go buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that has really helped us has been the education that we've received in watching people succeed, and also our desire to be able to really give great financial advice. So we've gone outside of ourselves and asked for professional assistance, and we've done that in a number of ways. One of the great ways has been Dave Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when we're talking about a budget, a lot of people have not done a budget and they're ready to buy a home. So it's good to back up and start from the beginning. Do your budget, really figure out what you can afford and want to afford. You'll get pre-qualified for much more than you can afford, I guarantee you. So bringing that back into a realistic area of what you really want to do, and encourage people to do what they really want to do instead of what somebody tells them they can do.
Yeah. What do you guys usually teach people is like a healthy mortgage amount? Do you give people percentages? Do you talk your clients through that? What is kind of a thing that you've seen as a healthy amount to put into a house?
There's many ways to approach it. And we look at the individual need of what somebody has, what they want to do, what they can do. Your legacy begins at home. That's where we start with things.
Mhm.
And that's our heart with it all. So we want to make sure we've got clients who are financially ready to buy, so that when I really started going full time before I knew Dave, I was crying out for something, because in the early 2000s, I saw people who had these needs and they were going through hard times selling their homes. And I wanted them to be able to have hope in the future. So I was looking for a way to communicate all of that information to them so that they could get started again, so that, the next time they're buying a home, they're ready to start. But the same principle, whether you're buying your first home, whether you're starting your next home, whether you're recovering, whatever that is, it's the same, is that, get yourself the $1,000 emergency fund, get your debts paid off, and so that you don't have those burdens.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
there's a freedom that comes in your life. And when you're ready to buy a home, you want to still have 3 to 6 months of expenses and savings, even after you have purchased your home, because then you have other expenses that come up. That's a bigger challenge, in the market right at the moment, because there's so much pressure to put even right now, because it's a seller's market so much more than a buyer's market. There's many buyers for a home and unusual amounts that are needing to be put down. So we're going to look at each client for what they need, what they have, what they need, and how to position themselves. So 10%, ideally 20%. And with the market, maybe 10% that, but you have extra cash you have to put down over top. So it's structured, the amount, the more you have to put down, great. And then we'll figure out how we have to position you for you to be successful in getting your offer to win in this particular market. And there's definitely some strategizing that needs to go on more now than ever. So,
Yeah.
but it's working. We're helping people be successful.
And you mentioned kind of extra fees and stuff, speak to the first time home buyer, what should they be saving? What kind of fees should they expect? What type of expenses should they be expecting when kind of closing on that first house?
That's a great question. One of the things that Jeanette mentioned was putting at least 10% down. If you're putting at least 10% down, you're not in the, you're going to be spending some money on what they call mortgage insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But with 10% down, you're not paying enormous rates that you would be paying at 5% or 3% down.
Okay.
So the general guideline is that we use is do a minimum of a 10% down payment to do yourself a favor. Mm-hmm. So you're not overpaying on insurances. If you can do 20% down, then you don't have to pay any mortgage insurance at all, which I think is a lot better.
Yeah.
Just takes a little longer to save that extra 10%.
Sure.
And when you're talking about a $300,000 house or a $250,000 house, $250,000 is almost not in the market in the Austin market anymore. So 300,000 is an entry level house, and 10% is $30,000. That's a pretty good turn on savings there. So
right.
If you've got that 30,000, that 10% down, you're going to need some other money for closing costs. So the closing costs on a $300,000 house is going to be in the neighborhood of $7,000. So you can see that you've got to have a pretty good amount of savings to enter into the market. And like Jeanette was saying earlier, you're still going to need your emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside, including that. So we would call that the cost of buying the house on top of your emergency fund.
Sure.
That emergency fund is going to keep you out of trouble.
Yeah.
Some of the other expenses that come up. So you're writing the offer and you're excited about it when what you're needing in the first week of going into contract. A typical is 1% of earnest money. So if your sales price is 300, 500, $1 million, whatever those are, typical has been 1%. Right now, it can be as much as 3%. It depends, but I'll stick with the standard. The typical, and then we can, whenever we're talking to somebody, we can go further. So 1% earnest money plus you need your option fee, which maybe we're seeing anywhere from $200 to $1,000. Again, it depends on your price point. The higher price points, these things are going up. You also, and that's money that's cash that goes out of your pocket. The earnest money goes to the title company, is held there by the title company. The option money is something, it's for a termination option, so that if you negotiate an option period, which is wise to do, even if it's just a couple of days, if we can work it out. There's a lot of pressure on the market right at the moment, incredible amount.
Yeah.
So some people are waiving that. Not the greatest idea, but in that, the purpose of the option money is if you have an option period, that you're giving that so that you have at least a couple of days to have an inspector come in, check in on the house, make sure that there aren't any unexpected issues with the house.
Sure.
So that if it during that time, if there are, that protects your earnest money and you can get that earnest money back.
Gotcha.
Um,
So you're paying for the
and
opportunity then to pull out if something doesn't work the way that you think
yeah,
it was going to.
that's true.
Cool.
The next, also within that immediate time frame, you're going to need money for inspections.
Mhm.
Your inspections typically are, say, $300 to $400. The larger the house, it might go up to $500,
Mhm.
$600. If there's any other inspections, if there was something you wanted for plumbing or for the AC or for a roof inspection, sometimes there's $150 or $200 fees for that.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's something that comes up in the foundation. And that covers those. So that money you need, there may be 1 to 3% of the sales price, plus your option fee, plus your inspection fees.
Mhm.
And right away, you're probably having to give money for your appraisal. So on a $300,000 house, that can be $5,000 minimum,
Right.
$4,000 to $5,000 minimum coming out of your pocket immediately.
Yeah.
In this market, it can be several thousands of dollars more, but we manage it, and it depends on whether you're buying resale or new construction.
Those will cover your closing costs when you get to closing. But those are things that you're going to have to be able to pay
Upfront.
immediately upon going into contract.
Within 3
And
days.
then a lot of those are applied to your closing costs, except for of course, the home inspection, which you've got to pay outside of closing.
The good news is that when we're sitting down with the buyer, we're pre-planning. So you have your lender letter, you know what your finances are, you've got an idea of what the market is, and what to expect, what surprises might come up.
Yeah.
And you're going to know when that money is there, and we keep you informed as we're going along with it. So you are the decision makers, but we're also making sure that you know what decisions you're making.
Right. So the education piece comes in that I think is
Yeah,
really
it really is
Absolutely.
important to have
Very
that.
important.
And where the fears come in, or if there's buyer's remorse, it's like, oh no, what did I do? It's like,
Yeah.
that can happen, and it's okay not to worry about that part.
Yeah, for sure. That's really good. When it comes to getting a mortgage, everyone talks about getting a loan, and that's why they talk about credit score. And I talk to people all the time who say, I need to have a high credit score to buy a house. I just love to ask you, like, is it possible to get a home without having a great credit score, without having a high credit score? Are there options for people who maybe don't want to go and borrow a bunch of debt to get a high credit score? Are there options for them?
There are options. We have seen that happen. You have to work with a particular lender who has the ability to do manual underwriting instead of electronic, because if you do electronic automatic underwriting, then it's going to look for a credit score.
Okay.
So in other words, what you have to do is you have to prove it in an unconventional way that you're credit worthy.
Yeah.
And because you are so good at handling money that you don't use debt,
Mhm.
the problem is that you're working with the debt industry to get a mortgage. And what they understand is debt industry language.
Right.
They don't understand cash industry
Sure.
at all. So they are going to charge you extra because you're not talking their language.
Mhm.
And so
A little extra.
that's going to be a decision that you have to make, because in order to do the manual underwriting and have that underwriter be able to qualify you for the mortgage without a debt score,
Uh-huh.
they're going to have to be able to sell it to an investor who's willing to invest in that loan. And in order to do that, it's going to cost them more. So you're going to pay a little bit more in interest rate and maybe a little more in points. That can be translated directly into interest rate also. So you'll have a higher interest rate if you do not have a credit rating.
Mhm.
But it can be done, because there's people that definitely do manual underwriting is what they call it.
If you were to choose to go that route, would that affect, in a market like this where, you know, everything's quick, would that affect how fast you'd be able to be approved for a loan? Would that be something that would affect, you know, if you had the potential to get a home?
Basically, in a market like this, that somebody that's going to have to go through manual underwriting, you get a pre-approval first. So the underwriter already knows what you're about to do.
Sure.
You've gone through all the preliminary paperwork. There's no surprises here, okay? Because if you're going to do manual underwriting, you're going to prove creditworthiness by different types of bills. Like you'll use your utility bills, you'll use different things that you've paid on a timely basis, showing that you're regular in what you've been doing.
Mhm.
So there's an alternative method to showing credit worthiness, even if you have no credit, because you have something that you're having to pay monthly all the time. So that the underwriter is using those as far as being able to prove that you're able to make timely payments. So all this can be done upfront so that you're pre-approved for the mortgage, and basically the paperwork is done. It's just a matter of putting a mortgage with it and then sending it through the process and letting the underwriter look at the appraisal and all the paperwork.
Sure.
And giving her final okay. But the initial you can do before you even start going to look.
How can people work with you if they're interested here in Austin? Give yourself a plug. How can they find you?
Our website, thefriendteam.com, but we're Jeanette Friend Harrington and Doug Harrington.
You can call
Friend team.
Me at 512-689-4551, or you can call Jeanette at 512-844-3331. We usually answer our telephones. You can send us a note at our website. Text works, email works, you name it.
SOS, whatever.
And we've got a great team, you know,
Yeah.
Joe, and we're growing and honored to train up the people who are with us on our team to see the opportunities and to care and make wise decisions. It's, you know, God takes care of us. We do what we can just to help you make the right decisions. That's where we win together.
Absolutely.
Awesome.